This is the Teachable Soul podcast. Because we cannot possibly live long enough to make all the mistakes ourselves, let's take a few moments to learn from the mistakes of others. The Teachable Soul podcast, where guests and listeners like you share stories of failure and teachable moments on the journey to success. Here's your host, Kat Daniels.
Welcome to the Teachable Soul podcast. I am your host, Kat Daniels, and today we have with us Agostino Pintus, who uses his experience as an entrepreneur and C-level executive to help others gain the mindset, knowledge, and confidence to start or grow their real estate businesses. He motivates his students, followers, and clients to make success a priority in their lives and to move beyond the comfort zone known as the middle class to achieve true financial freedom for themselves and their families. Welcome, Agostino.
Thank you for having me on, Kat. Greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today. Yeah. So do you want to start by telling us a little bit about kind of how you got where you are today?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. So it all starts in this little town in Canada, right? And I was a 9-year-old kid when I first discovered computers. And I knew from the time that I saw that computer roll into my grade school, I wanted to get in front of that thing and start typing away and figuring it out. I was one of those kids that wanted to figure things out. Once I got a hold of that machine, I started coding and all that. I decided that at that time in my life, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to create my own software company. And this is my thing. This is what I'm going to do. So I trained, I studied, and I was a maniac about anything to do with computers. I'm all about it. I was studying it. So the funny thing is that when you have family and you have friends and you have the society telling you that, no, you don't need to be doing entrepreneurship. It's too risky. You know what you need? You need a job. You need to go work for 40 hours a week, working for somebody that doesn't want to be there either. Mm-hmm. And this is what you're going to do, right? Yeah. And so that's exactly what happened. So I gave up on the whole entrepreneurial dream, and at a very young age started working as first as a computer technician, and then eventually joining the ranks at some big company as a director level person, then eventually becoming a CIO, a chief information officer. Now, and all that time, I always had a hard time going into a company and giving up my life, so to speak. The hours of our lives are very, very precious. We'll never get back to right. A group that don't really care about me. And I always had a hard time with that, and not to mention too, a lot of bad companies out there too. So there's great companies, there's bad companies, and unfortunately, I hit a lot of bad companies during this time. Yeah, and it's it was rather. I don't know. I guess you can say it was tough by the time I became a C-level executive at a publicly traded company. That my history, I knew that my history working for a company was not always that great. I was always scared. Yeah. And so when I'm in my early 30s working at a C-level company, I was doing great. I was earning big money. I had the big house. I had Corvettes and Hummers and all kinds of these fancy cars and all that. I was always operating in fear. Yeah. Always in fear, which is not a way to live. That's not, fear is not the reason why you start a company or do anything, So right. That's what I didn't know any better. And there's reasons behind that too. And we can go into that later, but I ended up getting into real estate in my early 30s and single family homes, doing single family, small multifamily deals, because I knew that if I buy a house and I rent it out, I can get an extra few $100 a month from every house. Cool. Maybe I can make enough money that if I get fired, I'll be okay. That was the whole reason behind it. Again, wrong reason, but that was the reasoning behind it. I was always I was always on my heels in fear. Right. And then, even though I was doing a great job for these guys, it's funny how things end up where the CEO of the company who I was working for decided that he was going to, quote, make a change in his group, and hands me the box and tells me to get out. And that's where the whole 10 dark years kicked off. And I went from job to job to job, miserable, terrible times, working for some awful companies. I'll tell you, Kat, I was sending out 500 resumes a week. If you had an email address, you're getting a resume in the hopes that anybody would hire me. So if you think of the whole scarcity mindset took hold, and it was plaguing my mind, the mindset was clearly broken.
Yeah.
And so what happened was, after doing enough of that stuff, I finally landed at a couple different crappy jobs, and then ended up at a company in New York where I working on the 27th floor of this company. At that point, I'd gone through a divorce. Bills are stacking up because I've been unable to hold down a job for longer than 9 months.
Yeah.
And I was just in a really bad place. IRS is banging down my door. Debt collectors banging down my door. I was totally broke. It was, it was terrible. Alone on the 27th floor of this building, and you look down and you say, I can make all this go away right now, right? I mean, it's very easy to do. Right above me was the roof, and there's no guards. So it's very easy just to get up there and just end it all, right? Fortunately, I didn't.
Thank goodness.
But it required making a decision that I was going to do something about it, and really what ended up happening was I made a decision to at least get out of the hole at a minimum. But that wasn't the whole story. Getting out of the hole is one thing.
That's just a start. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a start. I mean, because it takes years in many cases to actually recover. And it required a whole mental shift. And I'll tell you, from where I'm at now, where I've GP'd, I've been general partner for on about over $40 million of deals. I've locked up the biggest deal of my life so far. It's going to be $110 million in downtown Cleveland when this thing is done. This deal that I'm working on now. I have great friends. I have a super wife. My whole life is totally different. And it all had to do with a lot of self-improvement and really making a decision to be successful, and making a decision to really apply the positive things you need in your life. So it's what it requires. Our brain is listening when we're talking, right?
Yeah.
It listens to everything we say.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about kind of what was going through your head during like the dark 10 years. Like, why was there like some self-loathing going on, or like what was happening that made you feel like you were going to just stay there, for as long as you did? Because 10 years is a long time. That's a whole decade.
Yeah. I mean, wasted a lot of time for sure. Sure. So, you have to, just like I said a second ago, you have to really watch what you say to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think for many people, we become our jobs, and our jobs become us, right? So if you think of it like this, I'm working at this company, wildly successful. These guys started off with like a couple hundred employees. By the time I was able to get in there and fix all the problems that were wrong with this company from the technical perspective anyway.
Right.
I mean, I turned these guys into multimillionaires.
Right.
And, so I think I'm freaking cool. Look at that. I'm awesome. Look what I can do. Right. And
you're on top of the world.
Yeah. And on top of the world. Right. And these guys are like, we made a serious upgrade when we fired, or the founder, a co-founder rather, left the company, and he promoted me to take his job before he left. So it's like, all these guys are your biggest fans until one day they hand you the box and say, "Get the hell out." It's like, well, whoa, wait a second, right?
Right.
Kind of like you have someone else defining who you are and what you're about. Basically, is what they did. So. Yeah. So if you can imagine, Kat, someone telling you how much they love you and how great you are and all that stuff, and then the next day walking in the door and say, "You know what? Get your stuff, get the hell out. I never want to see you again." It's like, whoa.
Right? That's a whirlwind right there.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what happened. And unfortunately, I didn't know any better. I was focused on doing a great job. I never dedicated any time to self-improvement. I never dedicated any time to reading, to learning, to studying, to growing. I did not. I didn't do any of that stuff.
Right.
What I did was work 70 hours a week to running the treadmill to make these guys some cash. That's what I was doing, because that was what I was told to do. So that's exactly
your job.
That's my job. That's what you do. And until one day they say, "You know what? You're no good. Kat, you are no good. You need to pick up your stuff and get lost."
Yeah.
And when you hear that, you're like, what the hell? What the hell did I just do? Right. And
Yeah.
that's why it's like I go from job to job. My self-confidence was blown out. It was all
Right.
gone.
Of course.
I go work at these crappy, then to compound it, I go work for these crappy companies. And believe me, there's a lot of crappy companies out there, tons
Oh,
of,
yeah.
there's way more crappy companies than there are good ones, unfortunately. And the even worse thing is that if you go work for a crappy company and you realize they're a crappy company, you leave it and you put it on your resume, then you have to explain to the next company why you left that crappy company.
Right. Without explaining that they're a crappy company because you don't want to talk crap on them. Right.
Right. Exactly. It's ridiculous. It's all stupid.
Oh, yeah.
It's ridiculous, so it's like you have to choose to leave it up. It's a giant freaking game where, you know what? And that's what I'm saying though, that's why for anyone out there right now, when you have full control of your life, you take control of your life. This is the only one you get. There is no second chance. Yeah. Every minute you give up is another minute that's gone. You'll never get that minute back. You can always get back more money. You can never get back more time. Right. So, but as I'm going through these 10 dark years, I had ups and downs and all that, but it's like when someone tells you you suck, you embrace the suck, and you suck now. So it's like you're happy getting any income from anywhere. And that's exactly what I did, because I was trying to be the good employee for anybody that would take me.
Yeah.
I did not want to, I wanted someone else to control my life rather than me controlling it on my own. So that's the mental shift right there.
Yeah, of course. So did you ever figure out why they just one day suddenly kicked you out of the club essentially and were like, no, we don't want you here?
Well, it's funny because years later, I actually tried to start my own company in a way to compete with them, because I was still somewhat angry, which is not a good position to be in too, but that's a whole other story. Right.
Right.
And one of the trademarks of what I was able to do at that company was rebuild their entire software architecture. Like I brought in the right team. I designed it. I built it. Right. And the stuff that I put together, no one had ever seen before, because I wasn't from the financial services industry. I was actually from manufacturing. So I had no idea the preconceived notions that in financial services, you can't do this because of X, Y, Z. Well, in manufacturing, you can't. So I just took it and applied it, and it worked fine. know. So, but I built my own. I built my own system, but what I did was I used a small army of people at the last company because I had the budget. At my company, I didn't have the budget yet. I built something even better than what I built before because I already had the experience. Right.
Right.
Anyway, so the company that I was working with, years later, I was going to Virginia to meet some friends, and I actually reached out to the CEO. And I keep in mind, the company was probably valued at $1 billion at that point, and he'll still grab lunch with me. That's kind of cool. Okay, so I asked him. I said, "Well, everything was going great. I'm just curious, why'd you bounce me out?" They never actually gave me a good reason, right?
Right.
And he just wanted his buddy in there, I guess. I don't know why, but he said that sometimes you outgrow people, is how he put it, right? And in a way, this is why you have to keep growing. Looking back at it now, I understand. I understand it at the time. Now I do, right? And here's what it means: when you go from a small company and you start expanding and growing, and so let's say, for instance, you become, you start off with 20 employees and now you have 1,000. You have to be a very different executive to be at 20 employees. You have to be like rough and tumble, use duct tape to put stuff together, that kind of thing. When you hit 1,000 employees, it's a different game, different play.
Right.
You can't be that same person anymore.
That's
and,
right.
and looking back, I seem to think that they probably wanted more refinement, and I wasn't training myself to be that refined CIO that needed to take on that role. Right. I mean, now at the same time, they were helping other people get to those goals, but they weren't helping me. And I think there's other reasons behind it, where they didn't really understand technology, so they were pretty much hands off with me. Yeah. I just did what needed to get done, and it got done.
Right.
But at the same time too, it's like it's also my fault, right? It's no one else's fault but my own. And I did not commit to studying and training and going to the conferences and meeting the right people and all that stuff either. And if I would have done more of that, I think life would have been different. However, I wouldn't have what I do today. That's the thing. So that's the thing though, Kat, not to sound like I'm boasting, I'll do one deal. This one deal I just closed back in December. And it's a $4.2 million deal, 148 unit property in West Cleveland. And that one deal brought up my net worth more. It's a double of what I would earn an entire year as a CIO at that company. I did it in one transaction.
Right.
So that's the power of real estate. And it was a messy journey. I'll tell you that. It was terrible, but I wouldn't have had it any other way at this point. Now it's just now I just got to hurry. That's the thing. I've realized that I'm running out of time. So I am doubling down on everything that I'm doing because it's, like I said, our time here is limited. You have guess what? You have an expiration date. You're not going to be here forever.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, what you said is kind of why I started the podcast, because we can learn from other people's mistakes, hopefully. Not obviously everybody is going to take what they hear, and it means different things to different people too. So while during that time you were going through a horrible time, you now realize that it was probably the best thing that could have happened to you, because you definitely wouldn't be where you are now if you would have stayed with that company. You probably would have stayed with that company and retired there, and that would have been your whole life, working 70 hours a week for them, which sounds miserable, by the way. Who wants to work 70 hours in a week?
Kat, that's the thing though too. It's like, I don't mind working 70 hours a week. I don't mind putting in the work, but it's gotta be worth it, And that's the thing. It's like, I was in Colombia for 6 weeks back in December, December and part of January. I could never do that if I were working for someone else. I couldn't just say, you know what, I'm just going to go and,
out there.
I go do that, there's not much going on in Cleveland at that point. And we just closed the deal. I actually closed that deal from Colombia is what I did, right? I signed all the paperwork before I left and went, and it's too cold. It's too much snow.
Right.
What's the point of being here, And if I were working for someone else, there's no way I could do it.
Exactly.
So, but I think nowadays, probably about 4 years ago, what I ended up doing was recommitting my whole life to studying, to training, to expanding my mind. I listen to a book a week. So I have a book list, I have a book club, right? That every week we're listening to a new book. And we got to finish that book. So Sunday is the cutoff. So we start and stop our books on Sundays. So we have to listen to the whole thing on or before Sunday. And if we do it before, you restart the book, right? Or start a new book, right? I wasn't doing any of that stuff before. I wasn't going to conferences before. I wasn't going to meetups. I wasn't doing any of those things to try to improve myself and help build my personal brand or anything else like that. Everyone's got a personal brand.
Of course. Yeah.
And it took failing in a big way to make it happen. Sometimes, but to your point though, sometimes a good kick in the teeth is what you need to get moving.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think you took that for 10 years apparently. So
it was terrible. Yeah, but you know what though? It's like I said. There's I could write a book about those 10 years. It would be hilarious at some point. But some of it's funny, some of it's unbelievable.
Right.
But some of it was pretty dark too. But yeah, it's a very interesting time. It's a very interesting time. But you know what though? Out of it, I've been able to. I'm first off, I'm never going to go there ever again.
Right.
That place that I was at in my mind. I'm a totally different person now compared to what it was before, and it's how should I put it? It's a whole mental shift. Getting out of all that, getting out of that crappy mindset and changing up the mindset into a mindset of belief, into a mindset of faith that you're going to make things happen and you're going to make the bet. you're going to bet everything on whatever it is you're doing. Like this deal I just told you about, this $110 million deal, for instance, that deal. So not to get too financial with everyone on this thing, but there's full recourse loans. So in a full recourse loan is when, if something happens and the deal goes sideways or whatever, they can come back and take all your stuff, everything.
Right.
They take everything you own, right? I'm doing a full recourse. I have to do a full recourse loan on this. They won't do it otherwise. No bank will, right? I'm putting it all on the line that I'm going to pull this thing off, and I'm not scared at all. I will do it.
Yeah.
So to do that kind of stuff, you really have to have a lot of self-belief, no doubt whatsoever. You if there's any doubt, you don't do the deal, right? But 10 years ago, would I have done that? Are you kidding me? No, I was too afraid.
Yeah.
Fear is what ruled me. Fear is what ruled my mind, and not anymore.
So what happened kind of at the end of this 10 years that made you transition? Were you reading a book, or did you talk to somebody, or like what was it that made you transition your mindset here?
When I was working in New York at this company, and I met this gentleman who's also a New Yorker, and he needed some help with his company in Indianapolis. So having a conversation, he saw like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. He could see that when it comes to innovation and comes to technology and getting the team together and charging people up, I'm the guy that can do that kind of stuff. So he asked me to come on board to his company. Now, he was looking for a chief information officer, which is basically the person that runs all of IT or runs all technology. Well, he changed the title to chief innovation officer because he wanted me to get out there, talk to people. He wanted me to rebuild the tech group, so to speak, but with a big push in innovation. Yeah. Which is kind of cool, right? So I think it took, yeah. So, but it did was, I think, and reflecting on it today, what it did was it reinvigorated me into like, hey, this guy actually believes me now. It took this long to find someone. It was actually a good company. He put together a good company. Well, he didn't put it together. He was working at the company, but he put together a good team, right? He saved that company. The company was in dire straits. He came on board. He fixed it. He put a great team together, and then he brought me on board too. And everything was going okay until one day he decides that he's going to leave the company. He had some fighting with the firm that actually owned the company. Right. New guy comes in. He doesn't like me. He wants to bring on his own guys. So guess what? Here's the box again. Get the box. And I'm like, Jesus, how many times do I need to go through this? Like, I'm in my 40s now, and I'm like, how many more times can I give up give up my life, control of my life, to someone else that doesn't care anything about me or the people that rely on me? How many more times can I possibly do that? And people do it all the time. Every day. I would go to these companies and see like some dude pushing 60 years old. He's still working at some company. You could tell he hates it. And I'm like, how much longer can you keep this up? Right. Really, right? Anyway, so here I am. I'm like, I'm back at square one like I was before, sending out resumes, all that stuff. And my mindset's a little different. I'm starting to believe in myself, but I wasn't quite there yet. And then I'm like, I got to do something. I'm doing something, and maybe it's this real estate thing. I'm not sure yet. So I pack up all, like I knew this whole thing was coming. I knew it was right, of course. I was living in an apartment at the time, so I put everything into storage. I was living in a hotel while I was waiting for the axe to drop. Once it dropped, packed up my car. Same car I packed up when I moved from Virginia, packed up the car, put everything I owned into one car, drove to Michigan, started selling off my houses because I knew that I was going to do something with real estate, but I needed some cash, but I didn't know what I was going to do. It wasn't until I got to Virginia and where I had more properties. And I'm like, I was looking at a building, and it's like 30 unit building, not giant, not a big building. And I'm looking at it, and I was talking to a friend of mine. He's a real estate attorney. And I'm like, hey, who owns those buildings? He's like, what do you mean? People own them. I go, well, yeah, but what people? Banks? Like who? He goes, no, people, they buy it. And I go, how do they buy it? They syndicate it. I'm like, syndication? Syndicate? What's that? That's when they use other people's money and you pool their money to go buy the property. And they get an exchange, you give them a return, and they get equity in the deal. They get ownership in the deal. And I'm like, oh, I could do that. I mean, I've been working in corporate America forever. I mean, I know how to talk to people. I know how to sell. I mean, I could do that. So I decided that's what it's going to do. And that one conversation changed my entire life, changed the whole course of everything I'm doing now. That one conversation. So I ended up studying everything I could on real estate, because I studied more syndication stuff. I didn't know where to go to study it. I had no idea. I just started studying everything, right? Audiobooks, book after book after book after book, just reading, listening. This is what I'm doing. And I started studying the markets. I picked up a book and it said, study your market. And I was living in Virginia at the time. I discovered that Ohio was the place to be. It's one of the last cities that are coming out of the recession. And I'm like, that's where I'm going to Ohio. Packed up my soul. So I was living in one of the places that the last house that I was selling off. I just happened to have sold it off. Packed up all my stuff, moved to Ohio. I just went all in. This is what's up. This is what's going to happen.
Right.
That's it. Packed up everything and moved. That's it. I mean, I sold the house. I got nowhere else to go. So this is what's going to happen. And that's what I did. And I got here, picked up a consulting gig while I was working, or while I was trying to build the business. And I would drive around every day and night. Well, during the day I'd be working. So at nights, driving around, getting to know the neighborhoods, getting to know the areas. Of course, do it all online, all that stuff too. Once I felt I was ready, and I decided I'm going to buy a deal. And I found this super deal online, which you never do. It's very difficult to find. And back then it would have been a little easier. Today it's impossible.
Yeah.
But I found a deal and I bought it. And that was the very first one that really got the ball rolling. Once you do one deal in real estate, the second one is right behind it, because you realize the power of real estate. And there's no other business out there where you can leverage. The bank is calling you to give you money. You can put down $100,000 to control $1 million deal in some cases. I mean, there's nothing else you can do that with. Right. There is nothing, Yeah. So that's really the ball that got the business rolling. But I think what's more important than that, though, is that by studying and training human psychology, sales, marketing, real estate to some extent, even now, I mean, I listen to a couple of guys that do syndication, and that's really the extent of it. I mean, everything I'm doing right now, I study with friends that are in the business too, but I committed to learning human psychology, marketing, and sales. Those three things if you have those three things nailed down, you're going to get way further on, because your ability to speak to people and compel them to invest with you, to believe in you, to believe in the project is huge. It's absolutely. I never did any of that stuff before. I never did it. And if anyone commits to doing that kind of thing with conviction, it'll change your life. I promise. I promise it'll change your life. Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you moved there, did you know anybody yet?
No, I know anybody.
You didn't know anybody.
No, I didn't know one. No, seriously. It's kind of like, so at the time, my girlfriend, now wife, when we met in Indianapolis, I said, we'd met like the day before I left, or a couple of days before I left. I said, well, hey, listen, I got to go. I'm not staying here. I know we just met. So if you want to hang out, you can hang out. She's like, okay, I'll go with you. I'm like, wow, okay. So she came with me, right?
Man, talk about ride or die.
Right. She's a ride or die. That's right.
That's funny.
That's right. So she came with me to Michigan, then Virginia. Then I said, okay, baby, we got to go to Ohio. And she's like, let's go. She helped me pack the car and we went. And we stayed in a hotel till we figured things out. And once we figured things out, we moved into an apartment in the nicer part of town. And that we've been here ever since, So this deal, it's supposed to be closing in 60 days. We're going to go through 2 years of renovation. I mean, it's a big deal. 17 floors. It's huge.
Right.
Once we do that, then we're going to move downtown Cleveland in this really A-class, really nice place. It's going to be awesome when it's done. So, whole different life. But what's important though, it is a life that I'm designing. Meaning I'm sitting down every day and I'm writing out my journal. I'm explaining to the journal, here's how I did yesterday. Here's how I feel today. Then I'm writing out my affirmations, right? My affirmations are written as if it's already happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have 13,000 units. I have $300,000 in net income every day, and my personal income every week,
Mm-hmm.
every month. I have my Cybertruck. It just came in, the Tesla Cybertruck. I already pre-ordered that, by the way.
That is cool.
Yeah. So it's like, but you write it in the present tense because your subconscious does not know the difference. It doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know what's real and what's not. It doesn't know what money is. All it does is it activates your reticular activating system, and it keeps an eye out for the opportunities to get to where you want to go. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, was there ever a car that you wanted when you were a kid, when you were younger, or even now? I mean, you just say you wanted a Volkswagen Bug or something, right? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I'm probably dating myself with that, but there's
it was a Jaguar.
A Jaguar, right? Jaguar. So
an auto body shop, and so I knew all the pricey car names and what they looked like, and that's what I wanted.
Yeah. So what happens is you wanted one. Next thing you know, you start seeing them everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, you can't help it. That's your reticular activating system. It's like, as soon as I got it in my head that I'm getting a Tesla Cybertruck, now I see Teslas all over the place.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I never noticed it before. The same thing happens when you're writing out your affirmations. Like, I'm going to have 13,000 units. Deal flow comes to me now, right? Why? Because the reticular activating system keeps pushing me to create content to help other people get into this business, to help people be successful. And I know that when that happens, they're going to tell their friends, they're going to tell their brokers, and then they're going to call me. That's the driver behind it, right? Mm-hmm. It's very, very, very different. It's counter to what we've been told about this whole 40-hour thing that you're supposed to get up at 6 a.m., drag your ass into a place you don't want to be at. Terrible. And which, by the way, Kat, that's an all new phenomenon. This whole 40-hour work week thing is all new. It's all from the industrial age, when Henry Ford brought all that stuff to us. Henry Ford did the assembly line. He brought all that. Prior to that, there was no such thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What did they even do? Do you know? Like, I can't imagine a world where we don't go to work 40 hours a week and come home and, be tired.
Well, and that's that. I think that's the difference, is that America, and I'm not from America, I'm from Canada, right? America is the best country on the face of this planet. And I'll say that to anybody. And if they're upset, they get all butthurt over it, it's fine with me. I don't care. This is the best country on the planet. I honestly believe that. And I appreciate you and your family, because I know that you help protect this country, and I appreciate it. I thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, no problem.
The thing is that this nation was built on entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. So to your point, what did they do before? They were actually, say you're a farmer, so is the agricultural age prior to the industrial age. And what they would do is they would go and grow crops. They would put them on their trailers and bring them into town and try to sell them. They would engage with the local community and try to sell whatever they need to get sold, right?
Right.
They have their money, then they go back home, they buy other goods, whatever the case may be. That's the foundation of our country, right? Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurship was the foundation of our country. So that still exists on many levels. And that's just how it was back then, beforehand, before the industrial age really changed everything the way to what we basically have today. That's what they did. That's how it was. Yeah.
Yeah. My dad's side of the family, they, we have a farm in our family that has hundreds of acres out in Kansas. And it's actually still currently one of the only working farms that doesn't have its own well. So they don't irrigate the land. They just rely on rainwater.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it was bought, the house that is still there was bought from a Sears and Roebuck's catalog. And it was a build by number house.
Oh my God.
Still been there. I mean, we tried to look back at the records. It's been there since like 1903. And it's still there. And it's still in perfect working order over 100 years later. And yeah, I love that farm. But
you know what though?
Right, that's what they did.
Yeah, and that's the thing though. A farmer would wake up at like 6 a.m., 5 a.m. in some cases, and then they'd work the entire day. You know, there wasn't anybody there saying, "Oh, you must work only 8 hours because blah blah blah." There didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
There was no such thing. You work until the job got done. That's the foundation of our great nation. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so. And you know, that's one thing that there's certain things you can do in this country that you can't do anywhere else, you know,
right.
and I think that it's the work ethic here. If you work hard enough, you do the right things, there is no reason for anybody to be poor in this place. The opportunity here in America is enormous, and you have to apply yourself. That's the only thing.
Yeah. And that does not mean work 40 hours a week for somebody else, by the way.
Correct.
That's work hard enough yourself.
That's right. That's what I mean. Yeah. You'll never get rich working for someone else unless you're like the CEO of Disney or something like that. Then maybe.
Right.
But but even as a CIO, which I think probably slowed down my, how should I say, me finding a job, is that when you're at the C level, yeah, you make some really good money. The problem is that it isn't like there's eight of those jobs for every company. There's only one,
Exactly.
right? And there's a lot of competition. CIOs are typically the brightest people on the board.
Yeah.
So it's like they're typically, I shouldn't say that, but they're typically bright people. A lot of competition, you know, and you know, it's very, very competitive, especially if there's a job out there. So it's like it's a tough gig to get if you're really good, you know. So
well, and you mentioned too something that I absolutely hate when this happens, because I've experienced it so often myself as a military spouse, is that, you know, especially at the C level, like you it's so much harder because so many people, like the CEO already has somebody in mind before you ever even get fired that they want to put in your place because it's their buddy and their friend and they trust them. And I mean, I understand it in that level and appreciate it, but it sucks for the rest of us, man.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And that's happened to me several times now. You know, it's for whatever reason, they get sick of you. They want to quote, make a change. Typically a CIO will last, 2 years, sometimes 4. Very rarely beyond that, Right. The only reason why they last longer is because they committed to training and learning and networking and making, again, building that personal brand. But, it all depends on what you want. It's the hardest thing for someone to become an entrepreneur is putting in the work. It is not easy. I'm telling you. I mean, I'm not doing this. I do this because I love the business. I love real estate, but it isn't like it's glamorous and isn't like it's always fun either. Some days totally stuck. Some of them, that's terrible. Right. But in every entrepreneurial venture, I mean, there's close friends that I know, they want to be an entrepreneur, but it's all they do is they want, they don't want to put in the work to learn how to do something. Like, I don't know how to do social media. Okay. Well then either you learn how to do it, you commit the time to do it, or you hire someone to do it. One of the two things. Right. It was one of these two. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? That's the key. And here we are. This again, a year later, you follow up with them, and they're still doing the same thing they were doing before.
Right.
I've added about 12 million to my net worth, and they're still trying to figure out how to do social media. It's
right. Yeah.
Two different things.
Yeah. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Yeah. That's right.
Well, thank you so much for meeting with me and talking with me today and explaining, kind of how you got where you are today. I really appreciate you story with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Media or email that you want to give out if anybody wants to get a hold of you for any coaching in the real estate industry or any other coaching that you provide?
Sure. I mean, reach out to me, friend me on LinkedIn, Agostino.Pintus. You can easily find me, or Bulletproof Cash Flow. That'll work too. Now, if anybody wants to learn how to raise capital for real estate or how to talk to a broker, I have a couple of free ebooks. They can have them totally for free. They text the word freedom to 202-410-4202. They can get those books, download them, and they can study it basically, and hopefully that'll help some people out there that might be listening.
Cool. Can you repeat that number for me
Sure.
one more time? Thank you.
Yeah, 402-410-4202.
4202. Got it. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much again, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You have been listening to the Teachable Soul podcast. You can find us on any social media platform, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram as The Teachable Soul, or on Twitter as Teachable Soul. Also, if you'd like to help support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/theteachablesoul. You can also visit our website for more information at theteachablesoul.com.